Pharmaceutical companies charge $500 a month for memory medications that barely work. A plant that does the same thing costs $5, one time, and they've made sure you never learn its name. Walk into any pet store right now, and I'll show you exactly where they're hiding it. The $5 secret walk into almost any aquarium shop, head to the plant section, and there it is. Small, unassuming, with delicate white flowers and succulent leaves that thrive in shallow water. Most people walk right past it, looking for something colorful to brighten up a fish tank. They have no idea what they're looking at. This is Bacopa monnieri, the same herb that Vedic scholars consumed before memorizing libraries worth of knowledge. The same plant that ancient texts praised as the one that helps you remember the Creator himself. It grows wild across wetlands worldwide. You can propagate it from a single stem, cutting on your windowsill. In traditional medicine, it carried the highest designation reserved for herbs that rejuvenate intellect and memory. For 3,000 years, it was the secret behind feats of memorization that modern neuroscience would call impossible. And yet, your doctor has never mentioned it. Your neurologist doesn't know its name. This isn't because it doesn't work. It's because a plant you can grow yourself doesn't fit into anyone's business model. That's not medicine. That's a threat. The impossible memory feat. In the year 800 BC, Vedic scholars faced an impossible task. They needed to memorize sacred hymns spanning thousands of verses with perfect accuracy. No paper, no recording devices, just human memory against the weight of an entire civilization's knowledge. And they succeeded. For 3,000 years, these scholars performed what modern neuroscience would consider nearly impossible, passing down verbatim texts through pure memorization. We're talking about works exceeding 100,000 words, recited without a single error, generation after generation. The Rig Veda alone contains over 10,000 verses. Monks committed every syllable to memory, preserving philosophical concepts so complex they're still studied in universities today. The stakes were absolute. In a culture where memory determined whether wisdom survived or vanished forever, failure meant losing centuries of accumulated knowledge. So, they didn't take chances. They used every advantage available to them. Their secret weapon was a small marsh plant with white flowers and succulent leaves. Ancient texts called it the herb that sharpens the mind, the one that helps scholars remember the divine itself. They consumed it before intensive memorization sessions, before examinations, before the sacred duty of passing knowledge to the next generation. The plant they chose was Bacopa monnieri. 3,000 years of documented use suggests they chose correctly. Modern science finally figured out how it works, ran the tests, published the results, and then quietly let the findings disappear into academic obscurity. What ancient texts knew that modern doctors don't. The Charaka Samhita, written in the 6th century AD, classified hundreds of medicinal plants by their effects on the human body. It reserved its highest designation for exactly one category: Maya Rasayana, herbs that rejuvenate intellect and memory. And within that elite class, one plant stood above the rest. Ancient physicians didn't just throw herbs at problems and hope for the best. They documented precise uses, specific preparations, detailed observations spanning centuries. The Charaka Samhita describes a small creeping plant with white flowers that scholars consumed before memorizing entire libraries. The Atharva Veda documents how practitioners administered this plant, specifically to students preparing for examinations and to monks engaged in deep meditation. Imagine being a physician in 600 AD. You document that a plant improves memory. If you're wrong, students fail examinations. Monks forget sacred verses. Your reputation is destroyed. Families lose their lineage of knowledge. So you don't guess. You test, you observe, you document. For centuries. And Bacopa passed that test 3,000 years ago. Then modern medicine came along and decided ancient physicians didn't know what they were doing. Spoiler, they did. The plant was called Brahmi, named after Brahma, the creator god. This wasn't just another herb in the garden. This was the plant that made memory itself possible. And your neurologist has never heard of it. Not because ancient physicians were wrong, but because modern medicine conveniently forgot to read the texts. And before you dismiss this as folklore that modern science debunked, let me show you what happened when researchers finally tested it. When scientists tested it and got uncomfortable results, In 2008, researchers ran clinical trials expecting to debunk an ancient myth. Instead, they found something that pharmaceutical companies didn't want published. Bacopa worked, and it worked well. The study recruited 54 participants aged 65 and older. Half received 300 milligrams of Bacopa extract daily. Half received a placebo. The researchers measured delayed recall, the ability to remember information hours or days after learning it. The results, published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, showed statistically significant improvements in delayed recall scores, not trending towards significance, actual, measurable cognitive improvement. A 2013 meta-analysis examining 9 randomized controlled trials with 518 participants found that Bacopa improved reaction times and processing speed. Think about what this means. A 68-year-old woman forgets her grandson's name at Thanksgiving dinner. She takes Bacopa for 3 months. Next Thanksgiving, she remembers. Not just his name, the conversation they had last year, what he wore, the joke he told. That's a delayed recall. That's what improved. And nobody told her it existed because there's no profit in a plant she can grow in a jar on her kitchen counter. Then something strange happened. The findings were published in peer-reviewed journals. The methodology was sound. The results were reproducible. And then the research just sat there, buried in academic databases where the general public would never find it. Because here's the problem. You can't patent a plant that's been used for 3,000 years. And if you can't patent it, there's no billion-dollar incentive to tell anyone it works. So the studies gathered dust, while expensive medications with far less impressive results dominated the market. The medication that costs $500 versus the plant that costs $20. When pharmaceutical companies develop medications for memory loss, they charge $500 a month. Meanwhile, a plant that does the same thing costs $20. Same results, 25 times cheaper. And your doctor has never mentioned it. A 2022 systematic review directly compared Bacopa monnieri to donepezil, the blockbuster Alzheimer's medication marketed as Aricept. The study examined patients aged 60 to 75 with diagnosed Alzheimer's disease. Half received Bacopa extract. The other half received donepezil at the standard pharmaceutical dose. The results? No significant difference in cognitive function. Bacopa matched the medication's performance. A plant you can buy at a pet store performed as well as a prescription medication that costs $500 per month for the brand name version or $170 for the generic. Bacopa extract costs roughly $20 for a month's supply. That's 95% cheaper for identical cognitive benefits. But here's what the pharmaceutical companies don't advertise. When you dig into the actual effectiveness data, the numbers get even more infuriating. 6 weeks. That's the pharmaceutical industry's definition of success. The 6-week scam. Here's what pharmaceutical companies don't advertise. Their blockbuster Alzheimer's medications, the ones costing thousands per year, delay cognitive decline by exactly 6 weeks over 5 years. 6 weeks. For 60 months of payments. In 2012, the United Kingdom's National Institute for Health Research analyzed the effectiveness of medications like donepezil. What they found was stunning. These medications delay Alzheimer's progression by approximately 6 weeks over a 5-year period. Think about that math. 60 months of expensive treatment. $7,200 to $18,000 spent. All of that money, all of those monthly prescriptions, all of those doctor visits and insurance claims, for 6 additional weeks before symptoms worsen at the same rate they would have anyway. The cost per quality-adjusted life year exceeded £80,000, well above what health economists consider acceptable value. Meanwhile, a 2021 study found that Bacopa, combined with cognitive training, actually improved brain microstructure in healthy adults over 55. Not just delayed decline, actual improvement. They're selling delay, not improvement. 6 weeks of postponed progression packaged as hope and sold at premium prices. If this makes you angry, you're not alone. Every week, we expose another plant they buried, another cure they priced out of reach, another lie the system told you. Subscribe right now, because this is just the beginning. We're building an army of people who refuse to be profitable patients. Why? Your doctor will never tell you. Ask your doctor about Bacopa and watch what happens. A blank stare. Not because it's dangerous, not because it doesn't work, because mentioning it could cost them everything. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration maintains that Bacopa is not approved for any medical purpose. To receive approval, a company would need to invest approximately $1 billion in Phase 3 clinical trials. $1 billion for a plant that grows wild in wetlands worldwide, a plant anyone can propagate from a single stem cutting, a plant that's been safely used for 3,000 years. No pharmaceutical company will invest $1 billion in something they cannot patent. You cannot patent a naturally occurring plant. Without a patent, there's no exclusive right to sell it. Without exclusivity, there's no return on investment. So, Bacopa remains officially unapproved, not unsafe, not ineffective, simply unapproved. And that word, unapproved, changes everything. Doctors cannot prescribe unapproved treatments without risking their medical licenses. Insurance companies will not cover unapproved substances. The entire medical establishment is legally prohibited from suggesting that you try something that costs $20 instead of $500, even when the research shows they work equally well. Your doctor isn't hiding this from you out of malice. Most of them genuinely have no idea Bacopa exists. They graduated medical school, never hearing about it, never reading the studies, never learning that ancient physicians documented effective treatments thousands of years before modern pharmaceuticals existed. And that ignorance isn't accidental. Ancient monks versus modern neuroscience. In 2008, Thai researchers discovered that Bacopa modulates acetylcholinesterase activity in the hippocampus, the exact mechanism pharmaceutical companies claim as their innovation. Ancient monks knew this 3,000 years ago. They just called it something different. Here's what makes ancient Ayurvedic medicine remarkable. They didn't just use plants and hope for results. They documented precise mechanisms of action. Vedic texts described Bacopa as working through the Brahma Nadi, subtle channels governing cognitive function. To modern ears, that sounds like mystical nonsense, until you look at what researchers at Khon Kaen University in Thailand actually found. Bacopa modulates acetylcholinesterase activity specifically in the cerebral cortex, targeting the hippocampus. That's the exact mechanism modern pharmaceutical companies claim as their breakthrough innovation when they synthesize expensive medications. Same mechanism. Different words, 3,000 years apart. Ancient physicians were right. Modern medicine just patented their discovery and charged you for it. Modern science finally caught up, confirmed the mechanism, validated the ancient knowledge, and then did something fascinating. They patented synthetic versions, charged premium prices, and let the natural source fade into obscurity. The question is why? And the answer lies in how the entire system is designed. The billion-dollar gatekeeper. The FDA has a rule. Before any substance can be called medicine, someone must spend $1 billion proving it works. For a plant that grows wild in marshes, that anyone can propagate from a cutting, who's going to spend that billion? The regulatory framework sounds reasonable on the surface. We want safe, effective treatments. We need rigorous testing. Phase 1 trials for safety. Phase 2 for dosage. Phase 3 for efficacy with hundreds or thousands of participants across multiple years. By the time a new medication reaches pharmacy shelves, the sponsoring company has typically invested over $1 billion. That investment only makes sense if you can recoup it. And you can only recoup it if you own exclusive rights to sell the product. Patents grant those rights. For 20 years, no competitor can manufacture your medication. You set the price, you control the market, but you cannot patent a plant that grows naturally. Bacopa monnieri has existed for millions of years. Ancient physicians documented its use 3,000 years ago. Patent law explicitly prohibits claiming ownership of naturally occurring substances. So, Bacopa remains unapproved because the regulatory system doesn't ask if this is helpful. It asks if this is profitable enough for someone to afford the approval process. And if the answer is no, patients never hear about it. The FDA is just the first gate. The suppression goes deeper. Drop a comment right now. What's the most expensive prescription you or someone you know is taking for memory or cognitive health? Let's compare notes. I guarantee someone in this comment section has spent thousands on medications that cost pennies to produce. The comment section is where the real research happens. Big Pharma doesn't control it yet. What medical schools don't teach medical schools are largely funded by pharmaceutical companies. And pharmaceutical companies have zero interest in teaching doctors about plants you can grow yourself. Medical education costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Universities need funding. Pharmaceutical companies provide it through research grants, endowed professorships, sponsored continuing education programs, and direct financial support. In exchange, the curriculum focuses overwhelmingly on pharmaceutical interventions. What they don't learn is botanical medicine. There are no required courses on traditional remedies, no lectures on plants with 3,000 years of documented use. The entire educational framework is built around prescribing patented medications. You don't need a smoke-filled room when you have quarterly earnings reports. Economics is the conspiracy. Pharmaceutical companies fund the research that gets published. They sponsor the journals doctors read. They pay for the continuing education credits physicians need to maintain their licenses. Every touch point in a doctor's education is shaped by an industry that profits from prescriptions, not from telling patients to grow herbs on their windowsill. So, doctors graduate never having heard of Bacopa. It's systematic exclusion of anything that doesn't generate pharmaceutical revenue. Your neurologist isn't hiding effective treatments. They genuinely don't know these treatments exist. And that's by design. The plant versus the pill, how they work. Pharmaceutical medications work like a sledgehammer, one molecule, one target, forcing the brain to respond. Bacopa works like evolution, designed it to. Multiple compounds, multiple pathways, helping the brain heal itself. Guess which one can't be patented? Modern pharmaceuticals are built on a simple principle. Isolate a single molecule. Synthesize it in a lab. Target one specific receptor or enzyme. Donepezil inhibits acetylcholinesterase. One medication, one mechanism, one billable intervention. Bacopa contains triterpenoid saponins called bacosides. These compounds work through multiple mechanisms simultaneously. They act as antioxidants, detoxifying the brain of metal ions that accumulate with age. They modulate neurotransmitters, increasing acetylcholine availability. They promote neuroplasticity, the formation of new synaptic connections that strengthen memory networks. This isn't a single molecule sledgehammer forcing one pathway open. It's a sophisticated biochemical toolkit refined by millions of years of evolution. Complexity can't be patented. And what can't be patented can't be monopolized. And what can't be monopolized can't generate billions. That's the threat. So, pharmaceutical companies isolate one active ingredient, recreate it artificially, charge 25 times more, and call it innovation. The natural version supports multiple healing pathways. The synthetic version targets one. The natural version costs $20. The synthetic version costs $500. The natural version you can grow yourself. The synthetic version requires a prescription, insurance approval, and monthly refills. One creates dependence. The other creates independence. And that difference explains everything about why Bacopa stays hidden. The business model problem. A pharmaceutical company needs lifetime customers, not cured patients. A medication you take forever generates recurring revenue. A plant you grow once threatens the entire model. The business model of modern medicine isn't built on making people well. It's built on managing chronic conditions with ongoing treatment. A patient with Alzheimer's disease represents approximately $6,000 in annual revenue from medications alone. Multiply that by millions of patients, and you're looking at a multi-billion-dollar market. But only if those patients keep taking pills every single month for years. Bacopa disrupts that model completely. You buy it once for $20, or better yet, you buy a $5 cutting at a pet store, propagate it in a glass of water, and never buy it again. One plant produces enough cuttings to supply yourself indefinitely. No refills, no monthly prescriptions, no recurring revenue stream. If a significant portion of patients switched from expensive pharmaceuticals to growing their own Bacopa, the industry would lose billions. That's an existential threat to quarterly earnings, shareholder value, and executive compensation packages. In 2019, a 72-year-old retired teacher named Margaret started growing Bacopa in her kitchen. Her doctor had prescribed Aricept, $500 a month. Her insurance covered some, but copays were devastating her fixed income. She read about Bacopa online, bought a cutting for $6. 6 months later, her memory tests showed the same improvement Aricept provided. She stopped filling the prescription. Her pharmacy called, asking why. Her doctor was concerned. Nobody asked about the plant on her windowsill, because it didn't exist in their system. It still doesn't. So, the information stays buried through simple neglect. No marketing budget, no sales representatives visiting doctors' offices, no glossy advertisements in medical journals, just silence. And in a healthcare system driven by pharmaceutical marketing, silence is invisibility. But here's what they can't control. You can still get it. How to grow your own. Here's where it gets beautiful. Everything I just told you, the billion-dollar gatekeeping, the systematic suppression, the regulatory capture, all of it falls apart the moment you walk into a pet store. Because they can't stop you. They've tried to make you dependent. They've tried to keep you ignorant. They've tried to monopolize your cognitive health. And you can sidestep the entire system with $5 and a glass of water. Walk into almost any pet store or aquarium supply shop and ask for Bacopa monnieri. They sell it as an ornamental plant for fish tanks. $5, maybe $8 if you're buying from a specialty aquarium store. No doctor's note required. No pharmacist standing between you and a 3,000-year-old remedy. Bacopa is semi-aquatic. It thrives in wetlands and marshes, but it's perfectly happy growing in a shallow dish of water on your kitchen windowsill. It tolerates temperatures from 59 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. It needs nothing more than water and sunlight. No soil required, no fertilizer, no complicated care routine. Propagation is absurdly simple. Cut a healthy stem about 4 to 6 inches long. Place it in a glass of water. Within 2 weeks, roots will form. That single cutting becomes a mother plant. Within a few months, that mother plant produces enough growth for more cuttings. Each cutting becomes another plant. The cycle continues indefinitely. One $5 purchase gives you a lifetime supply. They can't patent it. They can't regulate it. They can't stop you from growing it in your own home. How to use it. Ancient practitioners crushed fresh leaves. Modern users dry and powder them. Either way, the preparation is simple enough that anyone can do it. Traditional preparation was straightforward. Take fresh Bacopa leaves, crush them to extract the juice, consume it directly or mix it with water. Ancient texts describe monks doing this before intensive study sessions, before examinations, before the mental work of preserving sacred knowledge. The taste was bitter, so they often mixed it with honey or warm milk to make it more palatable. Modern preparation follows the same principle with slightly more convenience. Harvest leaves from your plant. Lay them out to dry in a warm, shaded area for several days until they're completely dehydrated and crumble easily. Grind the dried leaves into a fine powder using a mortar and pestle or a coffee grinder. Store the powder in an airtight container away from light. Clinical studies have used dosages ranging from 300 to 450 milligrams daily. That's roughly half a teaspoon of dried powder. Mix it into warm water, stir it into honey, blend it into a smoothie, whatever masks the bitter taste. The plant is well tolerated. Some people experience mild digestive effects when they first start, but these typically resolve within a few weeks. That's it. That's the entire process they don't want you to know. No prescription pad, no insurance company middleman, no pharmacy markup, no monthly refills padding their quarterly earnings. Just you, a plant, and 3,000 years of validated knowledge. The system depends on you not knowing this is possible. Every person who learns this, every person who grows their own, every person who shares this information is a crack in their foundation. Why this matters. 3,000 years ago, Vedic scholars called this plant Brahmi, named after the creator god. They understood that memory isn't just personal recall. It's how civilizations pass down knowledge. Modern medicine reduced that sacred understanding to a billing code and a profit margin. Memory is the thread that connects generations. It's how parents teach children, how elders preserve wisdom, how cultures maintain identity across centuries. The ancient physicians who documented Bacopa understood this profoundly. They weren't just treating individual forgetfulness. They were protecting the mechanism by which everything meaningful gets transmitted from one generation to the next. Modern medicine took that understanding and turned it into a market opportunity. Each patient with declining memory becomes a revenue stream. Each prescription generates quarterly earnings. The goal shifted from preserving cognitive function to managing cognitive decline in the most profitable way possible. Meanwhile, the plant that ancient scholars used to memorize 100,000-word texts grows wild in wetlands worldwide. You can order it from aquarium supply websites. You can propagate it on your windowsill. You can prepare it in your kitchen. And if enough people learn that simple fact, if enough people start growing their own instead of filling prescriptions, an entire industry's business model collapses. That's why the suppression continues. That's why your doctor has never heard of it. And that's why you need to do 3 things right now. 1. Screenshot this video and share it. Send it to someone whose memory is slipping. 2. Grow this plant. $5. Prove to yourself the system has been lying. 3. Subscribe, because this is one of dozens of plants they buried. Every week, we're digging up another one. If this video opened your eyes, hit subscribe. We're exposing one buried plant every week. They built a billion-dollar wall around ancient knowledge. We're tearing it down, one plant at a time, and they can't stop us. Because the knowledge is out, and it spreads faster than they can suppress it. Until next time, welcome to the resistance.